Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Pep Talk. I know it's been a long time since I've been back on here, but I've just been busy with school. Been busy with Christmas break, Thanksgiving break. Wow, and I know that seems like a long time ago, but I've just had a lot going on, to be frank, and I just haven't had time to sit down and look at the news and be able to record a podcast episode as much as I'd like to. But I'm gonna try and really get back into it starting this week and going on from the coming up weeks. I hope to get back on track. But as you can see, I'm not my usual kind of space. I don't have the green screen behind me. I'm not my usual tired, but I just thought that I needed to sit down and get out some of this news just so I could get out of my head and just say that I at least made one episode so that I know I can get back on track, because it takes a lot of time to set up the whole screen and change and all that. So I thought you'd just appreciate this kind of more candid, casual type conversation today. And while we talk about the pressing news that's going on in the world right now. So with that being said, welcome back to Pep Talk, and thank you so much for watching. All right, so first off, let's talk about Russia and Ukraine. So that's obviously the biggest kind of international news story going on right now. And according to an article from New York Times, quote, senior Biden administration officials told lawmakers this past week that they believe the Russian military had assembled 70% of the forces it would need to mount a full invasion of Ukraine, painting the most ominous picture yet of the options that Russia's president, Vladimir Putin, has created for himself in recent weeks, end quote. So, as you probably know, Russia has been on the brink of invading Ukraine. And last week and the week before, we didn't really know if Russia was actually going to be invading Ukraine. We were kind of worried. We were seeing he was building up his military presence on the border of Ukraine, but we didn't actually know if he was going to go through with this invasion. And actually, today, President Biden in the United States has declared Biden actually invading Russia or invading Ukraine. He had sent these soldiers into Ukraine, into these disputed areas, and called them peacekeepers. Pretty pretty much a big fat lie. Like, they obviously aren't peacekeepers, but that's just kind of the legal kind of international law type talk he's trying to put out there to make it seem like he's not doing what he's actually doing. But the United States actually declared that he was invading Russia today. So that, or invading Ukraine. I'm sorry, not Russia. Russia is invading Ukraine. And what are we going to do about it? There's been a lot of talk about sanctions going on. And sanctions, for those who don't know, are basically economic punishments on a country. So we would like prevent trade with Russia, preventing them from getting needed materials and needed money, needed funds, needed resources, whatever. Those are targeted general sanctions on a country. Usually, what we do to punish a country for doing something we don't like, rather than going to war with them. But as of right now, the United States has declared Russia as actually invading Ukraine, and we are going to put sanctions on them. And a few other states have joined us, and China is actually, interestingly enough, gone against Russia's invasion of Ukraine as well and called them out. And that's also an interesting topic of discussion. But essentially, Russia has invaded Ukraine at this point, at least according to states like the United States. And it's probably going to get worse from here, unfortunately. Now, why would Russia be invading Ukraine? Might be asking. Like, what's kind of the whole deal here? Well, he invaded Ukraine back in 2014 when President Obama was in office. He didn't invade Ukraine during Trump's presidency, but he does again now during Biden's, which is interesting in its own right. But the reason that Putin is invading Ukraine is for a mirage of different reasons. But I think the foremost reasoning behind his invasion of Ukraine is because he just simply sees Ukraine as a Russian territory. He sees all of the Soviet Union's previous territory as Russian territory, and he's just claiming what is his in his eyes, essentially. So he's going into Ukraine thinking it's Russia, and he's essentially just going to take it for himself. And that's kind of the belief that Putin has and Russia has right now, and that's what they're doing. But there's a lot of skepticism regarding like what is actually going to happen next. What should we do next? What should we do in anticipation? Should we do anything? There's a lot of talk about what might or what might not happen. We really don't know at this point where this could lead. So that's really all that I have on that front, because all the stuff that I was going to talk about is kind of dated now that he's actually invaded Ukraine with peacekeeping troops. So that's the latest today. Putin has invaded Ukraine, essentially. And I don't know where it can go from here, but it can definitely get worse. But hopefully it'll get better. Now, moving on to a bit of a different subject, I wanted to talk about COVID. And I know I talk about this all the time on this podcast, but man, it is just such a nice topic to talk about because this in particular today, this week, is very important because I want to say either last week or the week before, Stacey Abrams, which is this Democratic representative, essentially, she was running for governor in Georgia, I believe, and she went to a preschool or a school, and she went to do like a reading session for the kids, and in support of her campaign. But she took this photo with them and released it on her Twitter, and I'm just going to put it on screen now, and I want you to see if you could identify what might be the problem here. Yeah, it's pretty obvious. The kids are all, these 6-year-old, 3-year-old, whoever old these kids are all masked up, while she, the politician, is just sitting, the adult in the room, just sitting down, unmasked, smiling. I feel like that picture perfectly encapsulates what the Democratic Party is right now. Masking everyone that they don't care about, while they themselves don't have to abide by the rules and the laws that they apply to everyone else. And I just think that picture is astounding, and is going to be one that's looked upon by historians to see how this pandemic has been treated by the different parties and different ideologies. Like, it is insane to have these little kids masked up when they have essentially zero threat, zero worries about COVID. They should not be worried about COVID for kids at all, because it is not dangerous to kids at all. Yet they're the ones masked up. And the politicians, this adult is the one that is not. Because why? Because she's the one who has the power. She's the important person. The kids are not. And I just do not find that as acceptable behavior or okay by any means. On a similar subject, I want to talk about a lot of these Democratic states are actually ending their lockdowns. That's interesting. Why would they be doing that? Well, they're probably feeling it in the polls right now. There are probably a lot of internal polls going on right now that is just showing the Democratic Party failing to gain the voters that they need and to keep them up. And so they probably have found out by now that, hey, maybe the American people don't want these lockdowns, having to wear masks all the time, not being able to go out without a vaccination card. People don't really like that. And I think they're finally starting to take notice. And it would make sense that that's the reason, because this year is actually midterm election year. So obviously there's going to be an election later this year in November for the House and the Senate members. And I think it's because this year they're gearing up for the election, and they're noticing that, hey, if we want to win some seats in the House, we want to win some seats in the Senate, then we're going to need to ease on restrictions, because people actually don't like having to be forced to do things that they don't want to, or forced to take medicine that they don't want to. So I think they're going back on this. According to CBC News, quote, California Governor Gavin Newsom, New Jersey Governor Phil Murphy, Delaware Governor John McCartney, and Connecticut Governor Ned Lamont on Monday all announced some rollback of indoor masking requirements, end quote. So as you can see, all these Democratic states are ending their indoor masking requirements. And of course, California is taking away their mask mandate, but not LA. So LA is still going to have it, but not all of California. Of course not LA. Why would it be? Anyway, it's interesting to see all of these different states all at the very exact same time getting rid of these mask mandates. And their reasoning for doing this, by the way, is saying that the science has changed. Now that we know we can take the masks off, we're going to do it. The data has changed fundamentally. So now that we know the data is, we can take off the masks. And the problem with that is no, the data did not change. Could you point out at any change in the data from what we knew 6 months ago? No. We knew masks weren't necessary. We knew that COVID was not dangerous for children. We knew COVID wasn't dangerous for a lot of people, actually. In fact, we knew how effective the vaccines were, actually. Yet, apparently, at the very exact same time, for all of these states, the data had mysteriously changed, and now all of them, at the very exact same time, are going to end their mandates. Very interesting indeed. But there you have it. And then from the New York Times, quote, Governor Kathy Hochul will let New York's mask or vaccine mandate expire this week. Her decision, state officials said, was not swayed by politics. No, but rather based on the latest data and advice from health experts. It's time to adapt, she said on Wednesday. End quote. Oh, really? Really? It's time to adapt, is it? Really? Your decision really isn't influenced by the idea that your party is needing to gain some votes to win some seats this year. That's not influence at all in your decision, really. It's all because the data had changed. What data has changed? None. That's the crazy thing about this. They're just lying to us at this point, and it's honestly, they've been lying the whole time. The entire time they've been saying the masks have been necessary, that these mandates, these lockdowns, they've been literally lying about all of that this entire time because they're not necessary. They're taking them away. Why are they taking them away now? Because they need to get ready for the elections and they know that people don't like them. I mean, that's all there is to say about that, to be honest. And also, just goes to show that we had the Super Bowl, 2 weekends ago, and there's this video going on YouTube. I'll put it up here for you kind of on the side about all of these people, all these famous people are at the Super Bowl and they are maskless, of course, while everyone else is masked. The important people don't have to mask, but, it's just bewildering to me that these people can keep on arguing for these mask mandates and yet they're the ones going out continuously over and over being spotted without masks in public because the rules don't apply to these people. Mayor Garcetti of LA was found maskless at the game and he was like, I was holding my breath. Like literally that's what he said, and it's just the stupidest thing ever. Like people are finally realizing that, hey, maybe these politicians don't have what's best for us in mind. Maybe all they want is more control. Maybe they want to make sure that they can keep the power that they gained over this emergency time during the pandemic. Maybe they aren't looking out for my best interests. Maybe I should be able to decide if I want my 3-year-old to have to mask or not, or get this COVID vaccine. Like maybe that should be up to me and not the federal government. I think people are finally noticing that, especially with what's going on in Canada right now. If you haven't heard, there are all of these Canadian truckers that are just opposed to having to be mandated to get the vaccine in order to keep their jobs. So there's this giant convoy happening in Canada right now, and they are essentially, and actually not just in Canada, but also in Israel and the US, these convoys, but the major one is in Canada. This major convoy of all these trucks blocking interstate highways and whatnot in order to peacefully protest the idea of having to be mandated to get the vaccine. Now, I must admit, I don't believe in any type of protest that blocks off like public streets. I think that's not the right way to go about protesting, but I will say these people are being very peaceful. There is no fires, there's no one's being killed, no one's being trampled or hurt. People are being trampled by horses, though, by the way. These police in Ontario, Canada, are trampling over protesters, but unlike the BLM protests that happened last summer, last summer, there are no buildings being burned down. There are no tear gas. There's no violence occurring here. None. It is peaceful protesting here, and yet all of the police in Canada are having to forcefully deal with these protesters. They were able to, like, one lady was trampled by a horse. Literally, they have police on horseback trampling people. Like, one was severely injured and almost died in the hospital. And there's people with riot shields, and these police are just reacting very violently to the protest, even though the protest itself is the most peaceful thing ever. And at the same time, there are other police officers that are like shaking hands and like hugging these protesters. So it's very, very weird how this protest is being framed, because Trudeau, the Prime Minister of Canada, has come out saying egregiously that the protests are violent, vicious, and like racist and all these horrible things. When you look up videos, they're just people hanging out, eating, and just trying to make sure their voice is heard. And actually, the craziest thing about it, I don't want to go on for too long about this subject, but Canada is actually freezing the bank accounts on suspicion alone of people associated with this convoy. There's no need for a court order. There's no need for nothing. Literally, if you support the rally, Canada is freezing your bank accounts. You can look it up. I'm not lying. I promise I'm telling the truth. And the idea that you protesting for something, especially something as important as not having to get a vaccine in order to get a job, would allow the government to then take your money away. That is absolutely insane to me. That is a right that all individuals have to protest, and yet these people in Canada are doing just that, and they're getting their money stolen from them, from the government, because they don't like what they're protesting for. So it's very interesting. But alas, I don't want to keep on the subject. If you want to learn more, I'm sure there are better news sources than me out there. I'm just kind of giving you my opinion and giving you a better idea of what's going on. But last but not least, I just have to include this last story because it is so hilarious. Basically, in early 2022, the Biden administration endeavored to advance this. They wanted to give out crack pipes. Like, I don't know how else to say it. They literally wanted to give out free crack pipes to various cities and municipalities in order to distribute them to drug users so that these drug users don't get infected from open sores or cuts in the glass. Literally, that is the reason they gave these freaking crack pipes out. They didn't give them out. They wanted to. They wanted to give out free crack pipes in order to make drug use safer and to promote racial equity, of all things, if you can believe it or not. And what's even more funny than that, if you can believe it or not, is Snopes, this fact-checking website, calls this claim as mostly false. And let me just read you what is apparently true about this statement and what's apparently false about it. I'm going to put the screenshot up here. But they say what's true about it is, quote, in 2022, a U.S. Department of Health and Human Services substance abuse harm reduction grant did require participants or recipients to provide safer smoking kits to existing drug users. In distributing grants, priority would be given to applicants serving historically undeserved communities. Okay, so that they were going to give out crack pipes is what they're saying there. They're like, yeah, that's true. We're going to give out crack pipes. But then they say what's false about it is that this was just one of the 20 components of the grant program and far from its prominent or most important one. So yeah, guys, we were going to give out crack pipes. That's not the only thing we were going to do. Like, you can't just make it out to be we're giving out crack pipes. We're also going to be doing other things, guys. It's like, okay, that doesn't make it false. You're still giving out crack pipes. But then here's the good part. They said, despite being the primary focus of outrage and news reports, the purpose of the program was to reduce harm and risk of infection among drug users, not to advance racial equity, although that was the secondary consideration. So what they're saying there is, because some people were saying that they were giving crack pipes out for racial equity, they were saying, well, no, they're giving it out for health reasons, but also for racial equity. That's more of a secondary reason, not the primary reason. And with that kind of clarification, they said this entire statement of giving out crack pipes was mostly false. Like, what kind of fact check is that? That is the most garbage thing I've ever heard in my life. Well, yeah, they might be giving out crack pipes, but we're also giving out other things. Also, the primary goal is to make it safer for drug users to smoke crack, not to promote racial equity, although that is our secondary goal. So the claim that you're giving out crack pipes for racial equity is, that's like mostly false. What? Like, that is just the most bizarre gaslighting I've ever seen in my life. But I just had to share that with you, the idea that the Democrats are giving out free crack pipes to people. Yeah, your taxpayer dollars, they are wanting to give out free crack pipes. Now, I think they actually decided that they don't want to do that anymore after all the backlash they've gotten. But just the idea that they even had that notion is just so ridiculous. But there you have it. I don't want to make this go on any longer. I'm sure this video is long enough. I really hope you enjoyed today's episode. I apologize for my long absence, but I am so excited to be back. And I'm going to be trying some different kind of techniques and different ways of approaching this podcast from now on, because I want to be unique, because I know there are so many podcasts out there doing what I'm doing. There are so many people talking about the news, talking about current events, talking about whatever the heck they want, man. And there's just so many people that'll get so many views. And it's like, who am I? I'm just some undergrad college student. Like, what do I know about like the world or anything else? It's like, well, I don't know much, but I'm learning. And what I really am trying to do is simply just get the current events of the day or the week and convey them to you in a quick, timely manner and an entertaining way. And hopefully I can do that, and I hope you enjoy it. But I'm going to keep trying my best to be better at it and to make myself better than the other podcasts out there that you can listen to. But either way, I appreciate your viewership. I appreciate you for being here. I love you guys. And yeah, that's the episode for today. So thank you so much, and I will see you all next week on Tech Talk. Bye, everybody.